Hey everyone, thanks for carving out this time today. I'm Alex Gillette. I lead the sales team here at QueryPal. But early in my career, I was on the support side of this. So I was in the trenches. I was managing a contact center team. I've stared at those endless dashboards and I've dealt with those team escalations at 4 p.m. on a Friday. And also joining me here today is Deb.
Hey folks, Dev Nog, founder and CEO of QueryPal. Before this, I was at PayPal, Google, eBay, and I founded Wavefront, which VMware acquired. That's actually where today's story begins, but we'll get to that.
Exactly. So thanks for joining us all today. I'm going to do something a little bit different. So instead of Dev pitching and me nodding along, I'm going to be asking some questions, the real ones, the ones you'd ask if you were running a support team, skeptical and looking for those holes. Because here's what today's session is really about. Your AI isn't stupid, it's locked out. Let's figure out why. So I want to start with a quote from an actual ticket, something support teams are all very familiar with. Dev, can you read the quote on the screen?
Why is my data not showing up on my dashboard?
So when I would run a queue, this exact type of ticket was my worst nightmare. There are other versions of these tickets, but the point is that we've all been there. It looks like a simple password reset, but it would take an entire afternoon to research.
You know, at Wavefront, we got that ticket constantly. We were a monitoring platform, so where's my data was actually existential for the customer. And here's what it actually took to answer that question. First of all, did the data actually arrive? Go check ingestion. Okay, it arrived, so why isn't it showing on my dashboard? Check the timestamps. And you'd find more often than you'd believe that someone had formatted a date wrong and timestamped their data 5 years in the past. It's there, it's just back in 2019. And if that wasn't it, you know, third stop, completely different system, a hidden limit on how many unique labels an account can send. You know, you trip that and the charts render empty, even though like everything seems perfect and the customer never knows they crossed that line. So 3 systems in that case, but that actually undersells it. The real point is that I didn't know what my next hoop was until I'd reasoned on the last one. Nobody could write, you know, a script for that ticket because the path through the systems depended on what each system said along the way. And that right there is what a complex ticket actually is. That's the whole webinar in a nutshell.
And everyone listening has their own version of this ticket. For you, it's where's my refund? Or why didn't the sync run? Or why was my claim denied? So different customer, same nightmare, simple question on the surface, 3 systems underneath, and you're stuck waiting for each one to answer before you know what to do next. And that's the real issue that we're going to be tackling today. So everyone on this call probably bought something last year. So whether that was a bot, a co-pilot, an agent, it doesn't really matter what they called it. The promise was always 80% deflection. The reality, 41%. That's the actual median across enterprise deployments. That gap is the challenge.
And I want to be fair to the vendors because both numbers are actually true. The 80% is real, you know, for the deployments that make it into case studies, that actually does happen at times. But the 41% is the median across everyone. That gap isn't fraud, it's actually just selection.
Exactly. But if you're a support leader, you don't live in the case study, right? So you live in the median. And look at the small print. The bottom quartile is 22%, and it's dominated by complex B2B programs, which is probably most people on this call.
Yeah, you know, 88% of organizations now use AI somewhere. It's probably actually higher, but that's the last data that we have. But only 39% can point to any kind of bottom line impact. That's from McKinsey, 2,000 respondents. So everyone bought AI across the board, but almost no one's P&L actually noticed it. And the rest of today is actually about why that happened. And it's not about the reason you were sold.
Exactly. So before we solve this, Dev, what does complex even mean? Everyone says complex tickets, but I don't think we're always talking about the same thing.
Yeah, we definitely don't define complexity the same way with AI. So, you know, humans define complexity as complexity of thought, of cognition. How hard do I have to think about this? And for the last 30 or 40 years, that was the right definition because thinking was the scarce resource. But with AI, it actually is not anymore. The reasoning models are actually remarkable now. They're very, very good. The reasoning got cheap and fast, but the access didn't. So here's our definition right here on the screen. And it's actually the one that predicts the cost the best. A ticket is complex in proportion to where the answer actually lives. So tier one at the top here, the answer lives in your knowledge base, your docs, your website, your PDFs, right? Your ticket history. Tier two in the middle here, the answer lives in your systems of record, right? And someone has to go fetch account level data like licensing or billing information. And at the bottom here, access level 3, tier 3, the answer requires changing your systems, taking an action, not just words.
Yep. And here's a perfect example that I'd like to share. So a support leader, one of our customers at a K-12 software company. So they told us something that stuck with me. She said, it's not tier one, it's complex for complex, period. Even our tier one analysts run SQL. So we have to think about that. Her entry-level people are querying databases to answer simple questions. In her world, there really is no tier one.
Yeah, and the industry data actually backs her up. So the structured intents, things like refunds or password resets, those deflect really well, 70+% with basically any vendor. The nuanced tickets rarely break 25%, with any vendor, with any AI model. And the asymmetry isn't about whose AI is smarter, it's about where the answer lives, like this slide actually shows.
Mm-hmm. So we analyzed 2,000 real tickets from one company. 18% could be solved with knowledge alone. 82% needed access to their systems. And here's the tough part. 27% of your first replies look like they worked. So it looks like a tier one issue, but the customer ends up coming back and the ticket actually wasn't solved. And that's your problem. So tickets that looks fixed, but are not.
Yeah, so I want to be clear here. If your iceberg at your company is inverted, if it's the opposite of this, and most of your ticket queue actually lives above that waterline, then the AI that came with your help desk is probably going to be enough. It's probably fine. Use it. You don't need us. You don't need anyone else besides that. And I'd rather tell you that now than after a pilot, right? But today's for everyone whose iceberg actually looks like this one, where you have most of the difficult tickets kind of below the waterline. Most tickets actually require hitting an account level access to get it done.
Yep. And here's the thing. Nobody really knows their number. So that is a problem that we'll come back to. So just hold that thought and we'll get back to it.
So this chart right here, this is what actually matters. This is the crux of the whole problem. If you look at cross-program production data from 2026, knowledge base only tickets are about 20% resolution rates, right? You have like that access, you can only resolve about less than a third of all tickets. If you add a CRM, you get to about 38%. Add billing or order systems, you get up to 50%, right? And the benchmark says it pretty clearly. The model doesn't matter, the AI model doesn't matter as much as what you can actually reach as far as data access. And that's the real story. Everyone's using the same AI nowadays. The ones winning aren't smarter, they just have access.
Yeah. So basically, the whole buying conversation has changed. So last year it was, how smart is your model? Now it's, what systems can you actually touch in my environment?
Exactly. And this chart, this explains that gap from before, the 80 versus the 41. It's not that the vendors lied. It's this, right? The case studies are on the far right of this chart here. They have full access, but most customers don't, and that's why they're stuck. So there are three things blocking this. Door one here on the left is sensitivity. You can't send PII, payments, or claims data to a third party's vendor cloud off on their infra. The AI never even sees it, right? It's basically blocked off from them forever. Now, most vendors in the space and support AI have competent AI, but they live in the cloud on their infra. That's a structural problem.
Yep. So door two is the one that actually kills me. What about systems with no APIs? So because, every support org, the tools people actually use, the billing console, the admin panel, that 15-year-old internal system that nobody really knows the name of, they don't have APIs, and they're probably never going to have API.
Exactly. And that's a silent killer. So when the answer is in a no API system, like most of us have used for decades, the AI doesn't just fail, it quietly passes. Tickets get marked, not automatable, and everyone moves on. Not because the AI is dumb, but because the tool doesn't exist. A lot of teams, that's most of their tier two work, that's most of the iceberg, just gone off the table.
And then there's the workflow problem, right?
Right. So door number 3, sequence. Even if you have access to everything, the next step, like we were talking about before, depends on what the last system told you. You need the AI to think through multiple systems in order, and most bots can't do that.
Yep. So we've got sensitivity, no API, and sequence. Those are the 3 walls.
And they map directly to what we're about to show you.
Cool.
Okay, so the fixes map exactly onto those 3 problems. And I'll be transparent about this. We didn't discover the problems first and build a product second. We built this company because we lived with these issues ourselves. So judge the diagnosis on the data. It's all from industry benchmarks. Then see if the fixes make sense to you. For sensitivity, the answer is obvious. Don't send data to someone else's cloud. Run the AI in your environment on your infra. We run everything in your cloud. Your network, your security, your credentials never leave your infra. And in practice, what this actually means is that you can have a real conversation with your security team. Instead of asking, should we send this data or that data to the vendor, it becomes, should we run this software inside of our walls? And that makes the entire question just go away.
Yep. So look, if you're a middle market and you don't want to manage infrastructure, we do have a cloud version, but you can hybridize it. So it's your cloud for the sensitive stuff and our cloud for the rest.
No API, no problem. So door 2 here is Bridge. So Bridge actually is QueryPal software that actually connects to those web apps that don't have APIs, right? It takes any workflow that a human does in a web application, your internal systems, your legacy tools, your billing systems, anything, and turns it into a tool that the AI can use directly. If a human can do it in a browser, our AI can do it as well.
Yeah, but we've tried this before. So automation tools that memorized where buttons were on the screen, one UI redesign, and everything broke. So tell us why Bridge is different.
Yeah, and this is what made RPA so fragile. It's because it doesn't memorize locations. It actually understands the workflow semantically. Find the account, open the billing tab, read the invoice. So when the UI changes, it actually adapts, and it's scoped. The AI can only do that specific task, nothing else. And if it can't complete a step, it fails loudly and routes it to a human with full context. So there's no silent wrong actions.
Right. So, and that's exactly what people are worried about.
So let's talk about the real risk here, because this is where a lot of AI implementations fall apart. Execution-enabled AI is riskier than read-only AI. You can push wrong updates, you can over-permission access, you can do things you can't trace. But you just can't stay in read mode forever because read-only doesn't solve anything. That's the kind of first half of tonight that we talked about. So here's what we do at QueryPal. Every capability has built-in controls. Reads happen before writes, always. Every action is human approval until the system proves it's confident on that specific topic. And when it escalates, it's smart about it. It decides whether to draft or to send or to say human needed. Here's the full context. And then there's this. We actually audit every single draft that we generate against what your human actually sent afterwards. We're looking at the delta between the two. Every ticket, every time, within minutes, which means we're constantly matching the tone, persona, typical length, reading level without any kind of work from your admins.
Yep. So that's pretty cool. But I think we should tell them about the failure story.
Yeah, okay. Accuracy claims are easy, but here's what actually happened. So we were in a tech evaluation with a very sharp customer, and our system confidently gave a wrong value on a hardware spec, right? Input impedance number, it was wrong, and the customer flagged it right away. But here's the thing. Our feedback loop actually caught it too within minutes, flagged that the answer didn't match the corrected one, and automatically knocked down the topic's confidence, stopping a candidate for auto response. And that's the point. Not to be perfect, but to make mistakes visible and to self-correct.
Okay, so what actually changes? For most of you right now, AI drafts, agents approve with a 90% approval rate, but the workload doesn't move because drafting isn't the expensive part.
That's right. Hunting is. Your agent reads the draft and then spends 11 minutes in 4 different systems trying to verify details and then finally executes it. We actually flip that. The AI hunts across all your systems, comes back with all the findings, all the data, and a recommended reply. And the agent just decides yes or no. That's 30 to 40% off of handle time.
Yep. And I'll be straight about this stuff because people worry that this means job cuts for them, right? So If your team thinks that this is about replacing them, they'll kill it. They won't use it. But what we actually see most of the time is capacity. The same team handles more volume without hiring. The work that disappears is the stuff that agents hate. They're looking up the same information over and over again. The judgment part stays human. So the agents see the system learning from their own replies, so they understand it's learning from them and not replacing them.
That's right. So quick example, with a claims ticket, for example, the customer emails, what's the status of my claim? Why was it declined? There's no claim ID there. Now, the old way is that the human agent would find the user in the system, pull their kind of past claim IDs, get the metadata, read the decline reason, and write it up, right? But the new way is that all that happens before the agent actually even opens the ticket. It's all been done ahead of time by the system. All they have to do is approve the response. One proof point, and I'll keep it to just 30 seconds. This runs in production for JetBrains with 11 million developers, 11 million users all around the world, roughly 30 products, each changing, every couple months. And dev tool support is one of the worst case complexity tests that exists out there, because you have this very version specific code level question traffic against docs that change monthly, right? If the constraint were intelligence, this deployment would be impossible, because it is just too much to keep track of. But this actually runs every single day in production.
Okay. Well, remember earlier I said the thought that I asked everybody to hold on to? So it was the number that nobody on this call knows, their iceberg number, right? So this is how you're going to get that number. So this is the real process that we use here at QueryPal, and what our free ticket analysis will give you in about 5 days. So we've got 3 panels, and I'll explain each one of them, because each of these panels is really going to be aimed at a different person in your building. So starting with panel number 1, your tier mix. So what percent of your queue is tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3? That number on the left, that's the figure that your CFO has probably been asking you about for a while now. And then we've got panel 2. So the second one is going to be integration demographics. So it's not just about what systems you own, it's about which systems your agents actually have to touch to solve tickets. So it flags which ones don't have APIs, right? So when you sit down with the security team to talk scope, you've got all your answers right there. And then you've got panel 3. So the third panel maps out sentiment and urgency by topic. And that's going to be where all the angry, time critical volume is really concentrating. And to be honest, even if you don't work with us, your operations team is absolutely going to get something useful out of this trial. So.
Yeah, and the ticket analysis, it's not just a brochure with your logo on it and some generic data. It's the exact same evaluation pipeline that we run in production for millions of tickets, pointed at your history, your tickets, your agent behavior. It's the real production product examining your queue in detail they've never seen before.
Nice. Okay, so I'll explain a little bit about how this works. So step 1 is going to be that free 5-day analysis, right? So you connect your help desk, or you just send us an export if security is a concern. And then step 2, we're going to show you those results. So that's when we both learn kind of like what's really going on in the queue. And then step 3, if a pilot makes sense, we'll run it for about 4 to 6 weeks. Drafts will be private notes at first, so nothing sensitive gets touched until you're ready. And then step 4, you go live. So you expand into tier 2 and 3 as you get more comfortable. So I just want to say thank you so much for everybody to join us today. If you're interested in learning more about the ticket analysis, you can go to QueryPal.com or scan the QR code on the screen, and we'll be able to get in touch with you. So we're going to open it up for questions in the chat. And I know at least 2 of you are going to probably ask about how Bridge handles authentication and what the security review really looks like. And Dev is going to be delighted by both of those questions, so don't be shy. Submit your questions and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Genuinely delighted. Fire away.
Thanks, everybody.